Doing that heavy 85 to 95%. We want to do that to fatigue, but then we want enough time to rest, right? So if we do it too quickly, then fatigue takes over. If we wait too long, then the potentiation fades. So the sweet spot is about 2 to 6 minutes following that heavy lift. You get into the jump training, then you can take another rest and kind of repeat that process with another heavy lift and another type of plyometric workout.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Movement Driven Podcast. I'm Dara here with Dr. Greg. Dr. Greg, how you doing today?
I'm doing well, Dara. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. I can't believe we're in March.
It's crazy.
It is
Flying by.
The lucky month.
Is it?
Yeah.
Oh, because of the Irish?
Patrick's Day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's not even on my radar yet.
No?
I got some other stuff coming up.
True. It's your birthday month.
That's right.
This week. Tomorrow. No, it's Friday.
Friday. 2 days.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, my God. Oh, my God.
Yeah. We had
Happy
a
almost birthday.
Thank you.
And your wife's birthday's this month.
That's right.
And your baby boy.
That's right.
He's going to be 2.
He's going to be 2.
Wow.
We have a busy month, so I don't even think there will be any green beer on my calendar.
Well, maybe I'll come in one day and
just drop some on.
you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let me know.
Love it. Well, cool. Well, today we want to talk about post-activation potentiation. And first of all, what is that in simple terms, and why should the everyday athlete care about it?
Yeah, well, it's a mouthful for sure. So post-activation potentiation, or PAP for short, is basically a principle that helps us kind of prime our nervous system. In specifically when we're talking about power movements, we want to make sure that our nervous system is ready and it's primed and it's rearing to go before we go do our explosive speed training or our power training for sport. Whether you're a CrossFitter and you have a day where you're doing power lifts, or you're a golfer and you need to create more speed, or you're a sprinter and you're on the track team, whatever it is, when we're doing those explosive type movements, we want to make sure that we're priming the nervous system during our training sessions so that we get more out of it. And basically PAP is a way to kind of, in simplest terms, you do a heavy lift before you do your jump or sprint training, and that's going to wake up your nervous system and prime it and get it ready to go.
Right on. Okay, cool. So we're priming our nervous system and getting this ready to go. Why does the nervous system matter more than stretching when it comes to power output?
Yeah, so I think like most people, when you're warming up, there's a lot of stretching, ballistic stretching, more dynamic, or static stretching. And we've known for a while now that static stretching really isn't the way to go. So these prolonged holds, that's not something you want to do before activity, because if anything, you're actually kind of calming the nervous system. You're extending the muscle, you're relaxing the muscle, and you're not able to get it ready to do these explosive movements. And so what PAP does is essentially the protocol is that you want to have a heavy lift, about 85 to 95% of your effort, and then you have a certain rest period, and then you follow that with the kind of related jump training, plyometric training, sprint training, speed work. What happens is you have motor units that are within our muscles, right? And a motor unit is essentially one nerve and all of the fibers that nerve is in charge of firing. And we have smaller motor units that are good for endurance work, and we have larger ones that are more built for the explosive power type movements. And when we do this heavy lifting prior to the speed work, we're able to recruit those larger motor units at a larger scale. We're able to get those motor units firing more quickly at a higher rate. We're able to get all of those motor units in sync with one another so that there's more of a coordination effect too. And so what they found in the research is by doing this, we're seeing bigger power outputs immediately after the heavy lift, as opposed to just warming up with your typical, jogging and ballistic stretching and, I'm ready to go. No, you're not. You might be ready to go, but your nervous system isn't ready to recruit these motor units at a very good rate or in sync with one another. And so it's allowing us to get more out of each training session.
Cool. So I think we've kind of talked about this to a degree in some other episodes, specifically talking about warming up and how
Priming the nervous system.
Yeah. So for like just a runner, you can't just go like run a mile to like warm up your run. Like you want to do like dynamic stretching and, some longer jumps or bunny hops or, the over the gate kind of, things. I think that's what they were called when I played soccer back in the day.
Hurdling and stuff.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. And for CrossFit type of workouts, like I think I joked about this, how like when I first started doing CrossFit, it was literally like the warm up was a standard workout for most people.
Yeah.
And then you get into the actual workout.
Right.
So that's, I think that we really want to emphasize here how like those types of warm ups, it's not just a little stretch a little bit, jog a little bit. We really want to like emphasize the movements that we'll be doing so your body's prepared for it, like you said.
Right. And I think if we kind of expand on that further, this is very good for a specific workout in which the main focus of that workout is to increase speed and power, right? So if we define that a little bit for the people listening at home, muscles have a strength component and they have a power component, which includes strength and speed together. And when you're only training strength, it doesn't mean it correlates to more speed or more power output, especially when we're talking about athletes and relating it to sport. So if we have an entire session that's dedicated to just plyometric training for an athlete, where we're going to do 45 minutes of jumping and sprinting and that type of work, if we just do that alone without priming it with the heavy lifting prior to, then we're missing out on potential gains. And, even when I was in school, they talk about how you should order a session. And if you were going to have a very comprehensive CrossFit type session, ideally you would have your power movements first, followed by your strength movements, then your endurance movements at the end. But what we're seeing now is if we change the order and have that heavy lift followed by a brief period of rest so that we're not completely fatigued, and then put in the power movements, we're able to recruit those motor units and get more from that same workout you're doing just by changing order of operations and making sure that heavy lift is that 85 to 95% of your 1 rep max, like we talked about.
Yeah, absolutely. I know just from experience of specifically CrossFit, just because that's the style workout that I did. But
Right.
when I was in college, before I really knew how to work out and how to do all of those things, my workout would consist of like, let me run a mile on the treadmill, then go stretch, and then go do whatever machines I was going to be bobbing around to.
Might be almost opposite of what you would plan it for now. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Okay, so if someone is listening at home and wants to try this, we kind of went through a simple example of how they could implement this safely. But what is like a good thing to be thinking about when you want to do heavy goblet squats followed by vertical jumps, or a deadlift followed by broad jumps? Like, what does that kind of look like if they're going to go implement this themselves?
Yeah, so like I do this with the golfers that I work with quite a bit, and what I try to do is the strength movement and the power movement should somewhat be correlated. Like we don't want to do a goblet squat and then followed by split squat jumps. I'd rather do a lunge or a split squat heavy single leg work and then do split squat jumps. So the movements should be as correlated as we can. But I think what's most important to understand is we talked about doing that heavy 85 to 95%. We want to do that to fatigue, but then we want enough time to rest, right? So if we do it too quickly, then fatigue takes over. If we wait too long, then the potentiation fades. So the sweet spot is about 2 to 6 minutes following that heavy lift. You get into the jump training, then you can take another rest and kind of repeat that process with another heavy lift and another type of plyometric workout.
Gotcha. So should there be a specific type of person who's injured who should avoid doing this kind of thing?
Well, I think anytime you're injured, like plyometric training can be a lot of impact on the joints. So we're talking about joint and tendon injuries are typically what we see. So it's not, you definitely want to kind of go through the basics of a rehab process and make sure you're ready for just plyometric and speed training in general. But when we talk about who's this good for, it's really good for any type of athlete. And I think when we talk about the athlete kind of over 30, when we hit 30, unfortunately, we start losing muscle mass unless we're actively trying to gain it. So if you're not working out for strength, then you're going to lose muscle mass just by part of aging. And that starts at 30. I know that's young, right, guys? Don't get depressed. We can fix it. But then when we talk about speed and kind of that recruitment of those motor units, that also starts to fade as we get older too. So for the athletes that like my golfers who want to increase speed, it's not just about swinging the speed sticks. It's not just about the mobility work. It's not just about the strength. It's about organizing these things in the proper fashion so that we can get the most out of the time that we're already taking out to do the work. Let's do it with some science and have the literature back up what we're doing, basically.
Yeah. So you mentioned specifically for like, kind of golfers and things like that, but how does this apply differently to golfers and runners and CrossFit athletes to just, maybe your mom or dad that just does, they work out at their box gym or their standard gym and they just want to be healthy, or the older patient that we have that wants to run around with their grandkids? How does that apply differently for those different sports and then just those different lifestyles?
I guess it's not as applicable to somebody who's not training for sport. I'm not going to necessarily have it if your goal is to burn calories and stay in shape cardiovascularly wise and just stay strong. It's not something that has to be in your program. But even that said, especially like you mentioned, the young parent chasing around, like you want to be able to kind of do everything you need to do. And even kind of I always work with my patients or talk to my patients about the what if, like, God forbid something crazy goes down. We live in a crazy world. You want to be able to run. You want to be able to sprint. You want to be able to lift your kids and get them out of some potential danger. And like, as crazy as that is to say, that is something that, as I think all parents kind of have in the back of their head, like,
Yeah.
God forbid if this situation arose, am I ready to protect?
Yeah.
So just from a pure instinctual and survival instinct, I think it is important to kind of keep the power up. But I am kind of, when I talk about PAP, it is the people that are competitive, whether it's just a weekend warrior and they're trying to increase their 1 rep max at CrossFit, or they're trying to compete. Obviously, this is something for them. But if you're just a golfer and you're trying to get more yards, this is for you. The long distance runners, if you're working speed work, that's going to lead to better endurance gains as well. So this is something that you can do in before your sprint work that you might be doing here and there. So it is applicable to anybody that's working out. But if your goal is just to kind of maintain health, then it's not something that's absolutely necessary to have in your program.
Gotcha. So can we talk a little bit? I know we've kind of briefly been talking about this the whole episode so far, but why returning from injury requires rebuilding strength before layering in power.
Yeah, well, I think you have to have the foundation, right? So a lot of time, just from a simple rehab standpoint, I'm usually working on the endurance of the muscle. First, I think everybody that listens to this podcast knows I'm all about the nervous system and making sure that we recreate that motor control and that muscle memory, so that you're recruiting the muscles in the right sequence and in the right way, and the correct muscles, and not leading to compensation. So we want to make sure that's down pat. That leads to then building the endurance of the muscle, where we're doing light load sets of 15 or 20, or doing a lot of holds and isometric holds. And then we're getting into the strength. And so those foundations have to be there before we even implement power, because usually coming back from injury, our joints and our tendons aren't ready to take the fast landing and the impact that is required of plyometric training and speed training. So it's over time doing things in the right order. But once you're back to power, now it's within a single session, how do we organize it, which we kind of touched on. But just from a being able to recruit more motor units, that's going to lead to all sorts of gains back into the strength and the endurance as well. So to fully rehab from an injury, it is kind of a good thing to have at that later stage of rehab, as you're getting back on the field or back into your workouts, for sure.
Yeah. So I think one of those questions that maybe athletes need to ask themselves before they do any kind of workout is, are you warming up to feel loose, or are you warming up to perform?
Right. Yeah. Is your nervous system ready?
Yeah.
I think what we're finding now in this field is a lot of it is about the nervous system. And if it's not primed or ready to go, you're missing half the battle already. Like you're just setting yourself up for failure in the long term, I think. So this is just one of those strategies we use to make sure that the nervous system is, muscles aren't guarding and they're not in protection mode, and they're in primal, instinctual survival, ready to explode mode.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, I think this sounded like a great episode. Just kind of quick, short, pungent, to the point. Is there anything that you want to add before we close out?
No, I think it's just the main point of why we wanted to do this was just to kind of introduce this concept, because it's not something that's talked about quite often at all, not even in within the field of physical therapy. So I'm sure a lot of people listening have never heard of post-activation potentiation. But essentially, just to kind of sum it up, it's about lifting a little heavier so that we can recruit more motor units, excite the nervous system, allow the contractile units to operate more, in sync with one another. And then we're going to get strength and power gains from that over time.
Yeah, awesome. Well, thanks so much, Dr. Greg. Thanks, was a great episode, and we'll catch you on the next one.
See you guys.
Thanks for tuning in to the Movement Driven Podcast with Dr. Greg Goldberger. Want to see how we're helping people in Jacksonville bridge the gap between pain and performance? Head on over to movementdriven.com. Until next time, keep moving, stay driven.